Isn't he fascinating? He's sitting in the lotus position. He's fishing. He's got an eye at the end of his line. The piece that's called La Storia, I just thought, I love that glass box. I feel like I want to use it. I started to play with these old pieces of the innards of old typewriters, and I just sort of casually placed the typewriter, an old manual one. I put it inside the box, and it sort of looked interesting. The proportions were right. So that sort of set a whole set of things in motion. I just walked around the studio and things would pop out. It started to take on a really interesting visual appeal. Some time ago, a professor of mine reminded us that we should be spending 10% of our time working and 90% of our time looking. So I find myself doing lots and lots of looking on the beach and looking on the paths and the rivers and puddles and the patterns that appear in so many things in nature. And this is my special little guy. I don't know what he is, but a little sort of some kind of monster. Oh, he's a little goblin. That is heavy, heavy metal. And it's encrusted with kind of little shells and various things from the sea or the water. And do you know, it really looks like bits and pieces of an old wreck, like those pictures of Titanic. This is the sort of place that I think brings me the most memories, especially growing up, which for me was growing up by the seaside in England. And it was full of adventure and romance and beautiful things and tragic things too, you know, so much tragedy and darkness and death. A lot of those things are being rekindled in my memory. All of these things, I know, shape us and then ultimately shape our art. I love to find all this crazy stuff on beaches because they're very provocative. Patterns and textures, they're all around you, and the beach is just ripe with them. So all these things about living by the beach and having my studio right here overlooking the water is just a hugely stimulating and powerful experience. But perhaps I could say that all my things, pretty much 95% of the things, if not more, are found objects and found materials that I find a new use for. For me to do a painting the conventional way, you know, with a rectangular plain white canvas, I find that quite difficult to do. It only becomes easier when, first of all, the canvas is not new, because there's already a little bit of a story going on, and it's all in the past. Did I tell you about how I discovered this antique scrap, which was tucked away in an old drawer? I think it looks like it's something out of a grandma's attic. Collecting the individual pieces of scrap became a popular hobby. It was usually collected in scrapbooks, which were works of art. They are now placed inside this book where it's all been carved out, and over the years carved and painted and recarved. This piece has been on the go for about 12 years. But, you know, it's got all sorts of things in it now. I feel like a hairdresser. This piece is entitled Coil. The word or the phrase mortal coil has been used in literature over the years, Shakespeare being one of them, and even more recently John Cleese. Quite some time after I had been working on quite a few other things, having some difficulty with some things sort of jumped off the shelves and out of boxes and out of drawers at me. For one thing, I had pulled out a big collection of nails that I had had stowed away for a long time. And so I pulled the nails out and put them on a table, and then I looked up and I saw this spool of industrial spool of thread. It happens to be pure silk. This photograph jumped out at me as well, and something made me think, get out the scissors and start cutting up this photograph, which is what I did. And within minutes the piece came together. It was just one of those uncanny things. It's almost self-resolving. The mortal coil that we all live, the mortal coil of life.
Mr. Bard! There's Mr. Bard!